I'm Connor, and as always, I'm joined here by Kyle.
Hello.
And Brad.
What's up, guys?
We're finally back. We apologise for our recording schedules, but we're back in probably the most important week for UK MMA in a very long time. So we'll get right into it and kind of speak about the return of our boy, everyone's boy, Darren Till. So,
a gorilla.
How excited are we for this weekend's UFC Liverpool card?
Not at all, really. I think,
I think that's fair.
It's pretty tepid enthusiasm around here. Don't think we've mentioned it, actually.
No. We've just been talking about UFC Chile too much. I mean,
who's Darren Till?
Yeah.
Kamaru Usman, yeah.
The real welterweight champ, obviously. Kamaru. Yeah. Obviously, we're all absolutely madly excited to watch.
Someone's a little bit more excited. Me and Brad are excited, but I feel someone's slightly more hyped. Kyle, why are you more hyped than us?
I think it's because I'm going. Yeah. That's the reason. I mean, I'm super excited for it. Just, like every now and then I think, just the way that I think about things. We're like, what if the fights aren't very good? What about this? And then it's like, I don't really care. It's Darren Till, Stephen Thompson. Like, that's
the atmosphere's going to be insane.
We asked for that so much. Like, when it was rumored and stuff, we were speaking about it so much, and like it's actually happening, which is crazy. Like,
it's mad that he literally talked his way into a number one contender spot. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like people sort of joke about, he's only beat Cowboy Cerrone, but then he just didn't stop banging on about fighting Wonderboy afterwards, and then he's got it in his hometown. It's so rare the UFC actually do things for people. I think it really speaks to. I think they can really see the potential in the star that is being created at the minute.
It's because how quickly did he sell out the Echo Arena?
I believe I saw 11 minutes. I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's just insane popularity, and I've seen so many comparisons to him and kind of early Conor McGregor with the Dublin card.
Absolutely. I mean, it's even more impressive when you think it's the only sporting event to sell out the Echo Arena. I mean, was it last month when Amir Khan came back? He fought there on his return and didn't sell. I think it was like 3/4 of the tickets were sold. I mean, obviously Till's a homegrown hero, but even still, like it was completely MMA hype that sold this out. It's totally deserved. So,
I guess we kind of have to get into speaking about the actual fight instead of fanboying over Darren Till.
No, this is the Darren Till hour. We're going to fanboy as long as we need to.
We did say we would do it, and I feel if it is a first round knockout, we will have a Darren Till hour.
Yeah. It'll just literally be an hour of us describing how beautiful his face is.
We'll watch it in such slow mo that the whole knockout would take about an hour, just to accept every single detail of it.
We should definitely all watch the fight back and record it together with us synced up watching it.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
And just talk about Darren Till the whole time and forget what's even happening. If it's a 5-round fight, I don't think it would matter because we just speak for at least 25 minutes about Darren Till.
Like, if you just notice how he just twists his foot on this bit and then he lifts his right foot up and moves it slightly towards Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Beautiful footwork there. And if you watch, his left foot now comes up. Oh, amazing.
It's just him. That's just him walking to the centre of the cage just to start the fight. But the thing is, obviously, as huge Darren Till fans, we are overlooking the fact that he is fighting Wonderboy, and Wonderboy is no joke.
Yeah.
So how it's not even a clash of styles. They're both just so good at what they do, and kind of similar in the way, but also not so similar. Wonderboy uses more kicks, whereas Till likes good boxing combinations. So kind of how do we see those two matching up? And do we feel it's going to be ended quickly, or is it going to be kind of a tactical 5-round fight?
I think, the old saying, styles makes fights, and I think this is a perfect stylistic matchup. Let's be honest, neither of them are going to even... I'd be surprised if they clinch. It's both of them like to fight at distance. Both of them have insanely good footwork and movement control. I'd say Till is a lot more explosive. He definitely has an incredible ability to get in and out. Whereas Wonderboy kind of keeps them at range, uses kicks to keep them a bit further away. I think how quick it ends depends on how much both of them choose to engage. I think Wonderboy is probably wanting to keep this at a bit of distance, keep Till off him, especially in the first couple of rounds. If it was anywhere else but Liverpool, I would say, Till's filled with confidence in that, but anyone can feel pressure under the big lights. But the fact he's going to be in front of his home crowd, home arena, are going to be... I'd be surprised if there's 2 people in that arena that are there for Wonderboy. He's just going to be so filled with confidence. I just hope he doesn't become overly braggadocious and gets clipped with a counter.
See, the thing is, you said about you don't think there's even going to be a clinch, but Darren Till's kind of Muay Thai experience, I've seen him close up and in close range of fighters, and he's really good at getting such high amounts of power from a close range. But the problem is, and I feel he's much better at Wonderboy at doing that. And he probably knows that, but I don't want him to be chasing Wonderboy trying to get close to use that power, because that's how Wonderboy's just going to pick you off.
Yeah, I think we could see Till clinch with him for sure. He's the bigger guy. I feel like he uses his strength a lot more. And he likes to keep the pressure on. So if Wonderboy's just trying to circle all the time, it's a good way to keep him in one spot. It's pretty much the number one way to beat Wonderboy is to limit his movement so that he can't do what he wants to do. So I think we could see Till do it, but I can't imagine he's going in there with that in mind. I would imagine it is maybe a plan B or plan C kind of move, instead of obviously most people when they're fighting Wonderboy is to take him down. Obviously Till's not going to do that, but he's no joke in grappling, definitely. And people obviously give Wonderboy a lot for his wrestling, but Wonderboy's wrestling isn't that bad. It's just obviously against somebody like Tyron Woodley, it's not going to be of any use. But I just can't see this fight going to the ground at all. I don't see it going past a round. I just don't. I keep thinking of it like a tactical fight, but I don't know. Something just tells me this is going to be 1 or 2 rounds.
It is one of those fights where it's just going to be either 1 round or a full 5.
I thought the same about Till Cowboy. I thought maybe this is going to be tactical, maybe it's going to be back and forth, and then I saw the pressure that Darren Till fights at, and I was like, no. If he in his other fights he fought a lot more relaxed and didn't pressure his opponents as much and was a lot more calm. But the way he went at Cowboy, I was like, oh yeah, no, you can't fight at that sort of pace and have a 25-minute decision.
We need to remember it was Cowboy with hair though, so it was at a disadvantage.
What is it about fighters
if Wonderboy turns up with an afro, we know who's winning.
I feel like Cowboy. I used to hate Cowboy with hair, but I feel like Jacare with hair is
worse, much worse. I was looking through old photos of Anderson Silva, and it was the Anderson Silva with kind of like the goatee.
Oh.
So bald head but goatee Anderson Silva, and that was horrendous.
Powerful
goatee.
Silva.
Yeah, goatee Anderson Silva looks like a retired porn star. It's terrifying.
So does his body at the moment, to be fair, after all the steroids are gone.
Have you ever seen there's a thing, it's weird side point, but have you ever seen there's Anderson Silva doing the sit-down meal where him and loads of guys talk about stereotyped male body image, and they're like sat having a dinner party, and he's like complaining, he's like, they all say I I'm unfit. I don't look good. And he's like, in his squeaky voice, it's just really strange. It's like undefeated
We've
middleweight.
checked off the impressions already.
Are we adding that to the Brad accents? I think that was rather similar to his Yana Kunitskaya impression as well. I think they're on the same levels.
We need to make a compilation album of these.
No, we don't. Please.
And they can be used in court when I'm arrested.
Evidence. But back to the original point. Brad, how do you see this going? Is it one round or is it going the full 5?
I really, it's like Kyle said. I just don't see how the pressure he's going to put on Stephen Thompson, because people look to Darren's pre-Cowboy fights in the UFC, and he's got 2 decisions and a draw, I think, and so people are like, just because he had one explosive fight doesn't mean that he's an exciting fighter. And it's like, it's different when he's in the main event. I think he recognizes the world is watching, and this is 10 times the exposure what he got from the Cowboy fight. The hype behind this fight is ridiculous, and like I said, he's literally fighting to be the number 1 contender in it, like one of the UFC's best, arguably the best division. I just don't see him taking a back step. I really don't, and I think that's going to confuse Wonderboy. I think a lot of Wonderboy's past opponents have been terrified to engage with him because they're terrified of his striking. And let's be honest, Darren Till has seen striking like that before. He's what is he, 44-0 in kickboxing? Like, he's seen what a good striker looks like, I think he's just going to keep him pressure. I don't even think Wonderboy's going to be able to use some of his big kicks really. So I do see it ending pretty damn quickly. Like I said, my one worry is that counter left hook and that counter kick that Wonderboy does it. You can't exactly train for it because there's not many people that throw a close distance kick like Wonderboy. I don't know, what do you like? All jokes about Darren Till and how much of fanboys we are. Do we think he can do it?
The one thing I keep going back to is just trying to think of people who actually went at Wonderboy and tried to pressure him, because I feel like in a lot of his fights, people were like, "Oh, he's this really good kickboxer. Like, oh, I need to take him down. I need to take him down." And then Wonderboy he's just far too good at getting out of the way and landing. I think of the Masvidal fight, and I'm like, "Oh, he managed to hit Masvidal, get out of the way, hit Masvidal, get out of the way all the time." But then I think of Darren Till and the way that he picks his shots, how calm he is, how big he is, the way he cuts off the octagon. And I'm like, I don't know. Obviously, I don't see it being nearly as dominant as the Cowboy fight was, where Cowboy landed only a couple of shots. But I can see Darren Till cutting off that octagon and landing really big shots. And we haven't really, whenever we see Wonderboy against big punchers, and we know Darren Till hits hard, and his accuracy is unbelievable, Wonderboy isn't known for having the best chin. That's not why he's where he is. That's not why he had so many wins in kickboxing. It's his technique. But I just feel like, I look at all the matchups that Wonderboy's had, and I'm like, nobody has ever backed him up like Till has. And even Woodley is known for being a pressure wrestler, and he was backing up for the majority of their fights.
Championship Woodley.
Yeah, vastly different things. Yeah, I was so a guy in my office today. Like, I've been getting him into the UFC, and I was showing him some tape on Tyron Woodley and Wonderboy and Darren Till, and from the first Woodley and Wonderboy fight, when he clips him in the first round, and he's basically like, an argument could have been made that if the ref had have had a closer look, that should have been stopped right there, because he was out on his feet, and then Woodley just like creeps over to him, like stands over him, and then he gets on top of him in half guard, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what happened to the Tyron Woodley that smacked Robbie Lawler and then looked like he was going to cave his chin in against the octagon? Like, that could have been over there and then, but instead he decides to clinch, go for a wrestling position, and then moves towards going for a submission. And it was the same. I think it was the Matt Brown fight. I'm not too sure. it might have been Jake Ellenberger, I don't know, I can't remember. And another example, he got clipped. Wonderboy got clipped. He goes down, and then the guy stood at range because he's too scared to get close in case it's like it's not as good as it looks. Then you move forward to watching Darren Till versus Cowboy. The moment he sniffed blood, he went after it. And it's actually kind of a horrifying finish when you watch it back because clips it with an elbow. He stalks him down. He knocks him down. The Cowboy covers up and he smashes him again and again and again and again and again. And sort of like I see very easily Till landing that straight left, clipping him a little bit, then moving in elbow and then dropping hammers on him. And I mean, you always have to go back to something with a record like Wonderboy's. You can't say you can see how a fighter that's never been finished can be finished because we've never seen it. But I think Darren has got the charisma and the confidence and the skills to do it. Whether he does is a different thing.
I don't know if this is us being kind of biased UK fans, because obviously we're not biased. Definitely not biased. No. But I just had a quick look at the odds, and Wonderboy is favourite. It's a slim favourite, but he is still favourite.
I feel like a lot of people, and to be fair, I have said this about most matchups involving Wonderboy. You look at Wonderboy, who undefeated as a kickboxer, one of the greatest strikers in MMA ever, and you're like, is he fighting a striker? Yeah. Well, he's going to win then. It's Wonderboy. He has never been beaten in kickboxing. He's great. But and obviously with Till, people like to say, oh, but it was Cowboy, you know, he's known for taking these fights kind of randomly, not paying attention to his opponents. But I don't know, there's just something about it. And I feel exactly the same about this fight as I did the Cowboy fight. And it's just like, I can just see him doing it so clearly. And I'm sure his team can as well. That's why they wanted the Wonderboy fight so badly. And Wonderboy lost to Matt Brown, didn't he? He lost that one.
Yeah.
And you think of Matt Brown, the sort of style he is as well. He doesn't let off once he smells blood as well. I just think, I don't know. It's just it. I didn't go with my gut for Till versus Cowboy, and I feel exactly the same about this fight. So I'm going Till definitely. But I can see why people would pick the favourite to be Wonderboy, because you would think, on paper, Wonderboy is like the most experienced and best striker in the UFC right now. Like, he is another level. Like, just technically phenomenal. So I can see why that, and we haven't seen an awful lot from Till, especially against high-level opponents. So I can see why he'd be the favourite on paper, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know is it just us? I don't know. I need to ask more people.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people, like I'm in a group on Facebook, and I've heard a lot of people compare this. These are obviously naysayers, not on the Till hype train, but they're saying this is exactly what it was with Ngannou versus Stipe, where people were like, the fans of Ngannou were saying, I can't imagine how Stipe is going to survive this. And it was one of those that, 5 minutes into the fight, you suddenly realised I was really on a hype train there. Like, I believed a lot of hype that possibly wasn't real. The only difference is with Ngannou, there was the mystery surrounding him because he hadn't had this really extensive kickboxing career. He'd just come from a village in Africa and homeless on the streets of Paris. So the chance that, we'd never even seen him on the ground. So the chances was he wasn't that bad as he turned out to be at wrestling. With Darren, it's different because he's had quite a long kickboxing career. He was K1 Junior European Champion. And we've seen what he can do in the octagon. So I don't think it is as the same as that, but I'm dreading getting to 5 minutes in and we realise that Wonderboy's footwork is just too much, or his counter ability is just too much. Like, I'm dreading it. I really am.
I don't think it's a really good position for Till because I don't think he has anything to lose here. Because if he loses, is he still going to fight a ranked opponent? Of course. And if he loses, it's like, unless it's a really bad knockout, which it could be with Wonderboy, but if he loses, I would imagine it is just Wonderboy outstrikes him over 5 rounds. And then it's like, okay, you got outstriked by the guy who's literally the best in the world at doing that. So,
yeah,
like, that is what he did for ages, and nobody could stop him doing it. So it's the same with like Masvidal. When Masvidal lost to Wonderboy, it was like, okay, all right.
Well,
it's like if you get choked out by Damian Maia, it's like, yeah, I'm not as good as jiu-jitsu as Damian Maia. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. So even then, and I just thought of this. The one that you say about Ngannou, and I was watching the Darren Till and John Gooden thing, and he's talking about these wrestlers and how he's so confident he'll smash him. That's the one thing that worries me, is I feel like a powerful wrestler. I don't know how good Darren Till's grappling cardio is and stuff. Obviously,
Kamaru Usman.
He did a lot of jiu-jitsu and stuff over in Brazil, but I feel like Kamaru Usman, who is somebody who doesn't care about putting on a good fight, he doesn't care about winning the fans over. Yeah, that could be a problem down the line. But Wonderboy shooting a double leg would be the strangest thing to ever happen.
I was going to say, if either of them shoot a double leg, I don't know what I'd do.
That would be the most jaw-dropping moment since Rumble fought Dan Hardy at 170 and shot a double leg.
Or shot Daniel Cormier.
No, that beats it. Yeah, that was
that. Oh yeah, you're gonna wrestle Daniel Cormier. Yeah, go on then.
Go on.
Yeah, go on.
Rocks him and then tries. That was the strangest moment I think I've ever watched.
I mean, the thing is, one of the things we haven't seen about Darren Till yet is he's apparently pretty well versed. He's competed in luta livre in Brazil, which is, it's an offshoot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's apparently much more about toe holds and wrist locks than it is about chokes and arm bars. But imagine if he takes him down and submits him. Like, everyone's expecting his striking clinic, and he just Damian Maia's him straight away.
That would be insane as well.
I'm pretty confident he's got a lot more grappling than Wonderboy. I just don't know
he's got a lot more strength.
Use it, and Wonderboy's defense is probably fairly good, because I would imagine he just drills defense, so he's probably fairly good at it. But
trains with Chris Weidman as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So you can imagine his wrestling's pretty decent.
Yeah, for sure.
Imagine if this turns into like grappling fest.
Oh no! Don't.
God, that's just Kyle's nightmares.
Oh.
But
yeah.
I mean, the other really big elephant in the room, and it's kind of a good analogy, is Darren Till's weight.
Don't.
I
don't.
I mean, it has to be discussed. He's a big boy.
So I think it was Kyle that put it in the chat.
It was. I shouldn't have.
What? So would you like to reveal your insider knowledge that has slightly made us cry?
I don't remember if this could be wrong, because I just remember seeing a tweet about it and being like, oh, whatever, and then scrolling past it, and then I remembered it like 2 days later and was like, I should mention that. But I'm pretty sure it was somebody had tweeted a quote from when he sat down with Nick Pete from Fight Disciples, and Tony Bellew was there as well, and they were talking about it, and I'm pretty sure he said he weighed 190 pounds. And this was recorded last week. But, like I said, it might have been from an earlier interview that somebody had quoted, and I didn't watch the interview, so I don't know. But a part of me thinks at the same time, though, I've been watching a lot of stuff with him lately, and I don't think he looks bigger than he has before. He looks about the same size. He always
big.
Yeah. So it's kind of his thing. And he hasn't, I don't think, has he missed weight so far?
Yeah, he's missed weight in the UFC. It was like 177, I think. Yeah. It was pretty over.
It's just worrying. And the other scary thing is we have a fairly straightforward commission. We don't have like a Brazilian commission where they're like, nah, just fine. So, if this was in Brazil, even Brazil, they like Darren. They'd be like, so what? He's over. He's the main event. Come on.
Yeah, but they only let Mackenzie Dern fight because she had like 10 pounds of ass fat. So they were like, if you took that off, she'd be straw weight.
They were like, that doesn't give her any advantage in jiu-jitsu, whatever.
That doesn't count. That's just for show. Darren's not got that kind of cushion.
I was going to say, to be fair, like me on UFC 3, she did abuse the overhand right.
Just came out.
Constant.
Somebody was button mashing her.
She threw everything plus those 7 pounds into that overhand right.
And landed it as well. So.
Oh, perfectly.
And looked fantastic while she was doing it. So
Just win.
And there's the Brad comment.
I mean,
that's your weekly Brad comment.
You've got your weekly sexism and racism in the podcast. There we go.
Oh God!
Yeah.
I'd just quickly like to say that Brad's views do not represent those of the podcast or mine and Kyle. Thank you. Thank you to future employers.
I mean, it's like Kyle said before. Team Carbon obviously think there's something in Wonderboy's game. Like, there is definitely easier matchups in that top 10 that he could have gone for and probably make a lot more sense. Like, a Robbie Lawler would probably give him just as much clout in terms of title contention, or even Jorge Masvidal. That would have been a sick fight, Till versus Masvidal. And it's not like he's going to get the title shot after this anyway, because there's an interim belt being fought for. Can't remember who it was. It might have been Chael Sonnen's podcast. Like, they should just skip the interim belt and just let Till fight for the title if he wins and he knocks him out. And if the RDA Colby fight's a boring 5-rounder, they should be like, nah.
I'm down for that.
You can keep the fake belt. It's alright. We're going to fight over here. Well, yeah.
But surprisingly, despite how much we've spoken about it, there are more fights on this card.
There is.
Yeah, even Kyle, who's going to the event, didn't know.
As soon as Gunnar Nelson was injured, I was like, there's only one fight.
So, is there anything else we're looking forward to? There's quite, obviously, there's our fan favourite, Neil Magny, fighting. Kyle, do you want to speak of your love for Neil Magny quickly?
I was speaking to a friend of mine, and he was like, how can you dislike Neil Magny so much? Like, there's nothing to dislike about him. I was like, that's why I hate him, because there is nothing about him at all. I don't know what it is about Neil Magny.
The Superman complex.
There's certain fighters that I just really don't enjoy watching, and so when Magny was announced for this, I was like, oh, as long as he's got a good opponent. And it was Gunnar Nelson. I was like, okay, that's fine. I can root for Gunnar Nelson. I'm a big fan of his anyway. And I really like the guy they've got to replace Gunnar Nelson, Craig White, from Cage Warriors anyway. So I'm still going to root for him.
I was looking into it, and I didn't realise his record was 14-7.
Yeah. I didn't realise that either, because I don't think I'd ever looked it up. I can see it right now, but I wouldn't have predicted that, given what I've watched from him in Cage Warriors.
Because he's also he's 27, isn't he? Still quite young.
Yeah, and his last couple of performances in Cage Warriors have been amazing. So if you had said to me, like, guess his record, I would have said, maybe he's like 8-1 or something like that, maybe like a bit more, a couple more fights. But I mean, to have 21 fights already is pretty crazy, but also to lose 7 of them is a bit strange. But I mean, I haven't looked into it. I don't know if those were in like a certain block of his career, maybe switch camps or something like that. But he's looked great.
Rough patch.
Yeah, so he's looked great in his recent fights, and that's what matters. I just one of the reasons I hate Neil Magny is because he is like an absolute rock in that division in the way that he always puts in these performances. So
kind of a gatekeeper.
He is, and like there are certain gatekeepers that I really enjoy in divisions. I feel like
Clay Guida,
Jim Miller, Joe Lozon. Those are great gatekeepers.
Aren't they all the same division? They're just all gatekeepers of lightweight.
Yeah, but I mean, but
we just love them.
There are some good ones at every division, but Neil Magny is just one that irritates me. I don't know why.
So he's the only fighter in the UFC that's at risk of getting an ear submission. It's what Gunner's entire game plan was coming into this fight. It's a shame as well, because with Gunner fighting, I was expecting Conor to possibly make an appearance.
And the GOAT.
Yeah, and the GOAT.
Did you see the comment Darren Till made about Conor McGregor? He said that even his nan knows who Conor McGregor is.
Yeah,
and
asks him
his nan asks.
Conor is.
That's such a nan thing.
Brilliant.
It is, yeah.
But we spoke about
Go on.
we spoke about Cage Warriors. There's fellow Cage Warrior alumni on in the undercard, Molly Meatball McCann, making a UFC debut.
If we ever do a debate question on what is the simultaneous best and worst nickname in the UFC, I know what my answer is going to be. Because Meatball Molly is somehow really good and also the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Definitely.
I really hope she wins her debut. I've got such a great excitement for Meatball's career. I know.
There was a really bad pause where it was just. I was really excited for Meatball's career.
And I noticed today the UFC having her and not her opponent, which I always find a bit weird. Fight at the open workouts as well, so they're actually utilising Molly and giving her the exposure that they need in front of a home crowd, which I think is a fantastic move. Because despite the fact, I think if she gets anywhere near the title, she'd be sacrificed like a lamb to Shevchenko. I think she could do well in that division, and I do want her to see her do really well. I can't say I'm familiar with her opponent.
I've just done a bit of research,
I remember we searched her up before.
And just a heads up, Brad, from when we do predictions, she doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so you do have to take that into question. She's 4-2, which is a strange record to have in the UFC. Like, to only have
flyweight
6
division
fights. Though. I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't know how many. I think only one of those fights was in the UFC. But yeah, I don't think it really. Oh, she has a loss to Cynthia Calvillo on her record, so that's nothing to be sad about.
Nothing too bad.
Yeah.
When did you fight Cynthia? Like out of the UFC?
Outside of the UFC, yeah. Yeah, I think it was not her last fight, but the fight before that. So maybe she's been inactive for a bit. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those fights where I don't know much about Gillian Robertson, so I don't know if I find out that they've given her because she's got really bad chin or something like that, then I'll be annoyed. But at the moment, it just seems like she's a fairly good opponent. I don't know if she's UFC caliber or not.
Good test.
We didn't even know who she was.
Do you know what? Like, and it's such a minor thing, but like I pick up and I get kind of annoyed at these things. How she's the blue corner, Molly, in the fight. She's like the quote unquote B side of the fight. I'm like, come on, like she won a championship belt there only like a few months ago in that actual arena. She was headlining. Like, first of all, I thought she'd be higher. I was surprised, quite honestly, she wasn't on the main card.
Yeah, definitely.
But that is what it is. But,
in my head, I'm thinking, is because she's B-side, does that mean she's coming out last?
No, she's the she's going to be blue corner, so she'll be coming out first. Which I don't know. I just find it. I know it doesn't really matter, but I just find it odd. Like, especially when Gillian Robertson's 4-2. It's not like she's this underground king that's like being brought to the UFC.
We say that now.
Yeah, that's true. I get why they've done it. Obviously, like put Molly there to get the crowd like on board. I just feel like there's the risk with not putting her as the first main card fight that it might blow the crowd out a little bit for the fights after that. It might be a little, especially if Molly loses, they might be a bit like just out of it, like not really.
There's some UK heroes, but there's no hometown heroes until Darren Till.
Yeah. So,
because you've got Arnold Allen, who's undefeated in the UFC, and a really good UK fighter, but obviously it's not. He's English, not Scouse.
I do find every time I look at this, I think that the placement of a lot of the fights is quite weird. You've got Elias Theodoro on the Fight Pass prelims.
I'm so glad you pronounced that because I was avoiding it so much.
You got.
He's got the most complicated name, and he's facing someone called Trevor Smith.
Yeah. Well, I'm not giving my edge to.
Well, I was saying just before we started the podcast, Lena Landsberg's the opening fighter, who is one of the few women on this planet brave enough to step into an octagon with Chris Cyborg, and at a time when there wasn't even a division. She pre-agreed to a special weight because she wanted to fight Cyborg. It's like
that should get you a main card slot. I mean, just
that should get you a slot in the Hall of Fame. The way the UFC's going,
or at least a fair bit of cash.
Yeah.
You nearly got her a position on the in memoriam section. Anyway.
Yeah, you've got Dan Kelly versus Tom Breese as well, and Tom Breese is, out of all the UK fighters, he's one of the top ones. So that really surprises me as well.
And Nordine Taleb, he's always entertaining to watch as well. It's I know what you mean. It seems a very odd card the way it's positioned. I don't know. I think let's not forget this card was kind of put together pretty last minute because when I went to the UFC in London, it had only just been announced, hadn't it?
Yeah.
And that was only 2 months ago. Yeah. Let's be honest, this was put together for Darren Till, so quite honestly, they could have just had a co-main with Molly McCann and just called it done. Just had 2 fights. So probably put together quite shoddily, quite last minute, but it's a pretty decent card. There was definitely some potentials for some really good matchups. I mean, Jason Knight's fighting, which is always an event. Hick Diaz. They need to do a matchup with Jason Knight versus what's the guy from Tough? The series of Tough called Skeletor Diaz.
Oh, I've forgotten his name. I'm never gonna remember it. He's got quite a long second name, if I remember right.
They need to have Hick Diaz versus Skeletor Diaz, and then it can be refereed by one of the actual Diazes.
The other guy off the Ultimate Fighter is Redneck Diaz, but he's not like Hick Diaz. He is just Redneck Diaz. That guy is crazy.
Why is everyone just calls himself a Diaz? It's like calling yourself a Gracie back in the 2000s. Everyone just needs to be a Diaz.
Everyone's a Gracie.
Yeah. Even Vitor.
Even Vitor. But I think...
You mean Victor Gracie?
Yeah.
There was... you mentioning about kind of a shoddy put-together card. But we spoke about in an earlier podcast saying how this is competing against another UK card that is also this weekend. We are spoilt.
Yes.
Once a year, which is good enough for us. But obviously, it's the MMA gods. So one of these cards had to take a main event hit, and it had to be Bellator.
So glad it wasn't Darren.
Yeah, so glad.
Imagine after all this, he broke his finger. It'd just be like,
don't say that.
No.
He better not be wearing any sunglasses. He's in Liverpool. It's all right.
It was Joe Giannetti. That's Skeletor.
Oh, Joe Giannetti.
But
Skeletor. He just needs to run with Skeletor Diaz. I love that nickname.
He looked great. So, and he's that name.
But going back, so the new main event replacing Mirko Krokop versus Roy Nelson is now Rafael Carvalho versus Gegard Mousasi for the middleweight championship.
Kind of couldn't believe that this wasn't the main event anyway.
Yeah.
It's that tournament. No, because that wasn't Krokop wasn't even a part of the tournament.
Neither was Roy Nelson. Yeah,
it was just Roy Nelson was eliminated by Matt Mitrione.
Of course. But, it was just Krokop's return. But as we said, the
middleweight championship defended. Kind of, I know we're all about Till, and obviously the co-main event for Bellator 200 is also a big one they're excited about.
Yeah.
But are we excited about this main event?
Yeah, really. I'm a huge Mousasi fan. I was so upset when he left the UFC because I don't know. I've always just found him really exciting. I think he seems like a really cool guy. And Rafael Carvalho is a sick champion as well. This should be a fantastic middleweight fight. I don't know. Bellator has got a really weird roster at the minute because it's half it's third still exciting former UFC fighters, 1/3 should retire legends, and then 1/3 of their own fighters. And there seems to be this weird intense rivalry between the Bellator fighters that were there all along and the ex-UFC fighters that have come over. And you see, it's like with the Douglas Lima Rory McDonald fight. That was probably one of Rory's toughest fights he's ever had. Because you could see in Douglas Lima, he just wanted to prove it's not even like he was fighting for his own championship or his own right. It's almost like he's fighting to defend the honor of Bellator. Like this is a legit organization. This is up there with the UFC. Fair enough that we might not have the biggest spread of top fighters, but the best of the best could still hold their own in the UFC. So I'm really expecting Carvalho to put on a massive performance, and I know Gateguard's coming to fight because he always does. So like I'm super, super excited to watch that. And I'm so glad it's Friday and Sunday as well. So like we get a break in between.
Is the Bellator card, because obviously it's a huge card, is it normal UK time?
I believe so. Because it's not pay-per-view.
So.
It's not pay-per-view. It's not even been shown in the UK.
It is. They are.
It's on Spike, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. For this,
we get Spike?
This one. Yeah.
Where do you find Spike?
No, I think Spike's on Freeview now. It's on. Yeah, because I think it got. It might have been bought by Channel 5, or they have like a agreement.
Yeah.
So
God, my Friday night just got better. I thought I was just gonna have to completely legally stream it. Of course,
legally.
Yeah.
Anyone listening? Actually, to be fair, you've been racist enough.
I'm leaving super early Saturday morning, so I'm gonna try and watch it. I've got stuff to do and got to leave early Saturday morning.
If it's on UK time, you should be all right.
Yeah, that'll be fine. It's just if it's on slightly later, I have no idea when I'm gonna get a chance to watch it because I'm gonna be so busy Saturday and Sunday.
One thing I quickly want to mention that we didn't speak about. Obviously, the UFC Liverpool's on at UK times. I think that it starts at 2 or 3ish.
Yeah. What
do we make of the BBC doing radio commentary for it?
I love it. I mean, it's not like they're broadcasting it on BBC TV or anything. So there's a way to go, but it's a huge step. And I would like to give props to Nick Pete and OJ Borge at the BBC MMA hour, because not the BBC MMA hour, but just the MMA podcast, because you can really tell that they've really got behind the UK MMA scene now. I think this is really, really down to them.
They're doing really well.
I'd be so surprised if they weren't the entire driving force behind this. Because Dan Hardy's obviously amazing for the British MMA scene, but he can't do it all on his own. And people, have liked to laugh at the fact it's being broadcast on, was it Radio 5 Sports?
Yeah, 5 Live Sports Extra.
Yeah. They average about 1 million listeners every week at that time.
Yeah, no. That's exactly the same station that all of the boxing shown on, a lot of the cricket and big sports in the UK. And MMA is getting a segment of that. Obviously, I think it helps because it's on a Sunday, but MMA is getting a big segment of that, and I think it's really, I really support it all the way.
And I think it's worth appreciating as well how this could be the way to get into a niche market in the UK, because it's going to be. I think it's being broadcast in between coverage of the cricket. And you have to realise there's a lot of old boxing fans, old men watching the cricket, that probably do listen to boxing via the radio. I know my granddad used to listen to boxing via the radio. He didn't even particularly like watching it. He preferred to listen to it.
I listen to quite a few fights on the radio, and I think with this, especially with, as you said about where they're placing it, I think it's really good to get new fans in, but also because obviously BT Sport are doing a really good job as well, because they're showing all of the prelims, they're showing the main card, and I think for the first time that I can think of, they're showing the post-fight show as well. So they're showing all of that, and I think it's really exciting for a UK MMA fan, let alone to have a superstar like Darren Till, but for kind of all the media getting behind it as well.
I think it's really indicative of the change in opinion towards MMA as well, because there was once a time, I hate when people ask what MMA is to me, and you end up, you say...
It's the worst thing.
The UFC, no. Conor McGregor, no. Right, cage fighting. Oh, right, yeah.
Cage fighting is always the one I go to.
And
It's just the worst.
And like, I know it's a weird like cognitive dissonance because it is cage fighting. So like, why are we embarrassed to say that? But I think that's indicative of like a past conception of it, where people just thought it was just brutality. And people even say now, they're like, "Oh no, it's too violent for me to watch that." And the BBC is broadcasting it during a cricket show in the mid-afternoon. I mean, I know they're not showing it, but they're going to be describing it. And like, you can, if Till batters Wonderboy, they're going to be like, he's raining elbows down on his face. In between, you now join the BBC Cricket Hour with your host. And like, I don't know, I'm really happy about it. I'm really happy about it.
I saw even even Ariel Hawani tweeted about it and saying how much he likes the way it's going, not just in the UK, but just for MMA being able to move on to a platform like radio.
And we got like what we were saying before about the sort of the pre-Conor hype doubling situation compared with the now Till situation. There's a lot of hype, like an advertisement and promotion being put behind this that UFC London didn't get. Like, just the fact it's being broadcast at a more American-friendly time. Like the UFC are very keen for the American audience to watch this. Darren Till posted on his Instagram story today. There's posters all over Liverpool. He's on like billboards and shit like that. I think there's a lot of people really pushing to see Darren Till become the next like UK MMA star. I hope it happens so much.
Yeah. I think moving back now to Bellator 200, co-main event, you've got Michael Venom Page versus David Rickles. Now, I'm fair in saying we're all big fans of Michael Venom Page. And Kyle, do you see this as it's his return to MMA, but do you see this as an opportunity to kind of really make him a star? Because he's kind of, you'll notice him on highlights footage and stuff, but he's not a big UK star.
Yeah.
Do you see this as his opportunity?
I don't think this fight, unless it's another highlight reel knockout that goes crazy viral and all of that, then I don't think this fight. I think to become a big MMA star in the UK, he's got to have another big fight like on like a big scale. I feel like him versus Paul Daly would do it, something like that. He's got to have that sort of scale fight. The thing that annoys me about Michael Venom Page is the fact that he's not a big star outside of just English MMA. The thing that annoys me even more is I don't know if he'll ever get past that at Bellator. I just don't see how Bellator will be able to do it. Whereas I feel like if Michael Venom Page was on this, say he was on this Liverpool card as the co-main event, people would see him and he'd be huge. Like he has that potential, and the way he fights as well is just like incredible to watch. It's so frustrating to me that Michael Venom Page, especially with this time he's taken off and doing the boxing thing and everything, it feels like he has everything. And people like to say that a lot about like Demetrius Johnson, Daniel Cormier. They say, oh, they've got everything. Like, why are they not a star? And it's like, well, there are certain things, but MVP has got everything that has made people stars. That's MVP. But it seems like he's only reaching a certain audience, and it's so frustrating. But so exciting to see him back, and I really hope he gets a win and then gets a big fight, because I just want to see him back in the octagon as much as possible. Well,
it's like you said, he should be fighting Semtex at this event. Like the Bellator matchmakers, I think, really fucked up when they didn't book that. Especially because they put like you get some fighters that kind of fight on alternate schedules, if that makes sense. So like one will fight, they should match up, but one will fight, get injured, they're out for 6 months, and then the other one will fight in that time, get injured, and be off for 6 months. But Paul Daly just fought, and they matched him up with John Fitch, and they expected that to be a barn burner. And it's like, oh, great, well, we could have had MVP versus Paul Daly at an English MMA event. and nobody thought that would be better than putting them up against John Fitch. And especially because, Paul Daly had his issues with Bellator, and it looked like he was going to go back into free agency, but he's back in it now. So, I don't, why this wasn't matched up, I don't know. I can't wait to see him.
Anything else on the card that we're interested in? You've got Aaron Chalmers making his debut against a guy with a record of 4-5.
I would also like to point out that it's a pre-organised catchweight fight, because he's fighting a guy who fights at lightweight and has fought at featherweight. So I'm assuming he's at a catchweight because he can't make 170.
It says here it's 163.
Why? There's plenty of welterweights. And on his last four, like you said, he's 4 and what?
Yeah, the guy's fighting is 4-1. 4-5.
4-5, fantastic. And he's on a 3-fight first round KO spree, isn't he? And he's putting him up against Aaron Chalmers, who apparently has some KO power. I think we've discussed it before, but I respect him so much for getting in there and doing it. I really do. And people are, oh, you just hate him. I don't. I'm a massive fan of Geordie Shore. I like the guy. I think he's funny.
It's because you're Northern.
Yeah.
I know. They are actually revered as gods up there. I think he's funny. And when I said he was going into MMA, I was obviously at first I thought it was a bit of a joke, and then watched him and I was oh, okay, dude's got hands. We can go there. And I want him to go somewhere. He's not going to go anywhere. If every time he fights, people are well, yeah, he's going to knock him out in one round, and he knocks him out in one round, and then he's great. What's the next lightweight I'm going to fight?
Is this the difference between Bellator and UFC? Because we spoke about Molly McCann, her debut in the UFC, facing an actual kind of relatively legit fighter. She's 4-2, compared to Aaron Chalmers, who is facing someone who's 4-5. I know comparing Molly McCann and Aaron Chalmers is slightly offensive to Molly McCann, but
one way of putting it.
Do you see that as the difference between UFC and Bellator at the moment?
I think so, definitely. That's always been the case, though. Bellator have always put, at least it appears to me, I feel like it's fairly obvious in the way even they structure cards with putting Krokop and Nelson over Carvalho and Musashi, and they did the same with, was it Rampage versus Chael over Lima and McDonald? It's
yeah.
It's almost like Bellator sort of, there's always this line with MMA between legitimate sports competition and entertainment, and it used to be more entertainment, and the UFC is more actual competition, legitimate martial arts, and I feel like Bellator tend to go over to that entertainment kind of path a little bit more, and with Aaron Chalmers that's sort of the case. To be fair to Aaron Chalmers, what's his record now, 4-0 or something like that, so
4-0
at the end of the day,
3-0.
He's only had a couple of fights, so
let's be honest, it's 4-0.
Yeah. He's only had a couple of fights, which I get. So that's not too bad. At least they didn't rush him in, and I have a lot of respect for Aaron Chalmers, because he's not saying, he didn't go in there and say, give me a top opponent, I'm going to make loads of money, all of this. He just, obviously, he got into MMA not to make tons of money, but because he probably enjoys the competition aspect of it. So give him somebody who will actually test him. You wouldn't, if you were fighting on Cage Warriors, where most UK fighters come up into the UFC, they wouldn't be giving you opponents like this. That's not how it works. They test you and stuff. And I just feel like Bellator look at that and they say we could give him somebody who's his level, similar record, and it would be an entertaining fight. Or they go, or we could have him open the card, get a first round knockout, and then the crowd will be absolutely loving the whole event. And that's what's always annoyed me about Bellator. They just have that line, and it's they prioritise certain things over what should happen. The stupid thing is the UFC does it at the moment as well. You got somebody who should probably fight this person, and instead they're but this makes more money, and it's flawed. It's one of the reasons I liked the UFC so much, is because they didn't do that, And boxing also does it, where they're like, this guy needs a tune-up fight. We could make this fight because this person's won the most fights, but we could also do this and make more money. Like the Triple G Alvarez thing is like
to me, like an undefeated record is less impressive. Like it sounds weird, but an undefeated record is less impressive than one that's littered with a couple of losses to genuine fighters.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm more impressed with, you know, say like a Wonder Boys record, like than not Floyd Mayweather, because that's a bit unfair. But you know, like when these boxers are like, "Oh, I'm 36-0,"
yeah,
it's like you've fought a bunch of farmers from Kazakhstan. Like,
yeah, it doesn't hold any stake in boxing. Apart from Floyd, because he's been doing it at a top level, I feel like, for a long time. He's fought some very legit guys for a long time. But most people...
It's the Bruce Lee thing of, I don't fear a man who's learnt 1,000 kicks one time.
Yeah.
I fear the man who's learnt one kick 1,000 times. I don't care if you've lost, because if you've fought that tough opponent, kind of it rubs off on you, and you do improve. Even from losses, you improve.
And you see it so much in fighters that have lost, and then they come back as different people. And it's like Aaron Chalmers. Like I'm always open to like a new UK star, no matter where they come from. And like, you know, like I said, I like the show. I like him. If he was to come out and become this amazing MMA fighter, I'd be a huge fan of him. I don't want to see him become like, do you get a padded record of 12-0? Just because he's just going the regional circuit, but just on the big screen. The one thing I did want to ask you both is, I remember seeing something about this being a cross promotion between BAMMA and Bellator. Is he now signed to Bellator?
I thought he signed, didn't he? But then again, Scott Coker
was
there at BAMMA. But I believe it was to actually sign him. I don't think it was a cross thing. I'm pretty sure he's just in Bellator now.
Because I've seen him comment saying that Bellator is Bellator promotional debut, but whether that just means he's fighting on this card and then going back to BAMMA, because like maybe this is the start of it. You know, like maybe he's going to fight on this card and then he's going to go over and fight in America on a bigger Bellator card. I mean, fair play to him if he does, because Bellator have got a sick welterweight division. Can't wait to see him fight an actual welterweight for once.
So, moving away from the cards from this weekend, quick bit of news that was released today, and it's some sad news for Kyle, because his future opponent, Fabricio Verdum, failed a out of competition USADA test. As I said earlier to the guys, that I'm not really surprised given his performance against Volkov. What do we make of this? Kind of another Brazilian failing a USADA test. Another Brazilian legend failing a USADA test.
That's in a comment on this only, like, just before we started the podcast, but somebody put, like, no, another Brazilian failed a drug test. I'm sure it's a mistake. like, I don't fully understand how steroids work, but I'm pretty sure they're meant to have better bodies than that if they're on the steroids. What would his body look like without the steroids? Like,
just everyone walks around looking like Roy Nelson.
I mean, let's be honest. It was I've kind of felt for a while now that Fabricio was looking to retire anyway, because he was just taking all these nonsense fights. You know, any opportunity he was fighting at a fight night. Got a couple of pay-per-view things. I think I always got the feeling that he was taking as many paydays as possible, and then he was just going to jack it. So I think this is quite possibly the end of Verdum's career. It's always such a shame when something like this happens at the end of a career, like with Silva, because then the question is always kind of was he on it the entire time? I don't think he was. I'd be surprised.
I think the one question that is only remaining now is Rising.
I think he'll go to Bellator. I mean, and there's
late replacement in the tournament.
If only it had been pulled up earlier, he could have stepped in to fight Roy Nelson.
I was gonna a rematch against him and Fedor
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, or him versus Crow Cop, and like, there's some fun fights you can do there, which are not like super, testing fights. But at the end of the day,
they're Bellator fights.
Yeah, and we spoke about it after the Volkov fight, and it just seemed like he only ever had one game plan, which was to take him down. If that didn't work, then he was screwed, because it just sort of seemed that he gave up and just was taking shots without answering and stuff. And it was just a bit like, it didn't really seem like he wanted to be in there once he realised he couldn't take him down or submit him. So I definitely felt like it was going to come to an end. Obviously, a bit surprising to have it happen like that. I figured he would just fight out his contract or something. And it's a little bit sad in the same way to see it happen like that. And it's the same with a lot of the Brazilian legends, apart from maybe Jose Aldo, who's actually been able to fight. I mean, he hasn't retired. He's still got more fights happening. But hopefully Jose Aldo will be able to fight his last fight and then retire. Same as Vitor. Like, that was a really nice moment for Vitor. It's just a shame.
Really nice.
Well, not the fight. Not the fight.
I was going to say, I think
I'm sure that's how he always thought his career would end.
I was going to say, I think Kyle has the same memory of Vitor from that fight. I don't think Vitor remembers it that well either.
Honestly, leading up to that fight, I knew Vitor was retiring. I was like, whatever, it's been coming for ages, whatever. But like, when he was actually stood there and he was like, getting ready to take off his gloves, I was like, oh, this is actually a pretty big moment. And like, the crowd were like, obviously, Brazilian crowd were like so into it and stuff. It's pretty crazy. It's just sad to see Verdum, who in some people's eyes is considered the greatest heavyweight of all time, and see him go out like that. No, sorry, I said some people's eyes.
Yeah, I was literally about to say the same thing. Some people's eyes.
But
some people's eyes that are above sea level.
Yeah. But that was it's just strange to see Verdum probably go out like that. But yeah, I think he'll go to Bellator for sure and put on some Verdum versus Sonnen. You do that. Verdum versus Rampage.
You're just running through the heavyweight, the title, the championship list now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
everyone apart from Matt Mitrione.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that at all.
I think Verdum versus Chael Sonnen could actually be a really interesting fight, especially with Chael's amazing top game and obviously Verdum's game off his back.
And Brazil.
Or we give Vitor a year to get on that Mexican shit. Come back as heavyweight Vitor.
Get on that tainted meat.
Yeah. On those Canelo tacos. Come back absolutely jacked off his tits, and then they can fight in Rising. I would just like to point out that Rising clearly took our idea, because no more than a couple days after the Machida front kick was Vitor Belfort seen in a TRT clinic, to the collective cheer of every MMA fan across the world who's been watching his career slowly crumble over the last 10 years.
And his body just melt. Oh. His body is literally melting before our very eyes.
I feel like we might see a large part of the UFC's heavyweight division go over to Bellator in the next couple of years, because a lot of it is pretty old. And a lot of it could make some big money in Bellator.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm looking at Alistair Overeem there, thinking, you're tired of getting taken down against top wrestlers. Let's fight Crow Cop.
Do we need a return of the Ubereem?
Ubereem versus Super Crow Cop. Let's do it.
Well, going back to your point about Vitor retiring in the ring, I was trying to think whilst you were saying about that, about the only fighter that I kind of got almost emotional about seeing them retire in the ring. And the only name I could think of was Mark Munoz, which is quite weird. But I just remember him retiring in the ring and laying his gloves down and being like, actually, that's quite sad. I think he beat Luke Barnett in his final fight.
I think Faber's was fairly sad, just because of how much influence he's had. And even though I hadn't watched a ton of his fights at the time, just seeing how emotional he was. But Brad Pickett as well, that was quite a sad one.
Brad Pickett, I completely forgot about Brad Pickett.
Yeah,
I got really sad at the Matt Brown retirement until he shoved it in my face and came back like 3 weeks later. He got like his kids in there and he was like getting all teared up and I was choking up, and then he was like, Matt Brown's been announced. I was like, for fuck's sake, man.
Yeah.
Like, I know some people get the itch after like 6 months, but Christ, you barely got out of the cage before you'd sign another contract.
Brad doesn't like to show any other emotion apart from pure anger.
There was anger then.
That was quite a tough time, and I feel we should end the podcast like we always do with Brad's anger. So
while we're on the subject of retirement, I would like to bring up we have a former UFC champion announcing his new career in comedy, where Chuck Liddell announced that he would like 2 tune-up fights and then would like to fight John Jones.
John Jones. Oh, have you seen the Twitter beef about that though?
It's
just why.
I mean, him and Connor must have the same coke dealer, because that sounds like some amazing crap.
I know that I've said this already like a couple of times, but if I was working for Bellator, I'd be on the phone to Chuck Liddell. I'd be like,
100%.
How do you feel
No,
about...
but he also said he wanted a rematch with Tito.
So that makes sense. I mean,
who on earth? If I could describe Kyle's face when I said that, it was kind of like a disappointed trout.
I don't want to see that at all. I don't really want to see. Tito Ortiz was somebody that I never was like a huge fan of anyway. So seeing him fight again, especially in the way that he fights, I'm like, it doesn't do anything. However, Chuck Liddell, I want to see him fight. I'd watch Chuck Liddell versus Rampage again. Why not?
Just for the sheer pasting that it'd be, I'd like to see him fight John Jones.
I would.
Like, fine.
I would watch that.
And like, I've always
imagine
had this,
the build-up.
I've got this mate that he was like a huge UFC fan about like 7 years ago, and for some reason he just teetered off. So he's like in this, when we talk about UFC fighters, he's always like, oh yeah, I know this one, I know that one. So if you mention someone like Roy Nelson or Crow Cop, he's like, yeah, I know them, blah, blah, blah. And he's convinced that the golden
top
age,
heavyweights.
like top heavyweights. He's convinced that the golden age of UFC fighters was around like 2007, 2008. And I've always said Daniel Cormier, probably Gustafsson, Rumble, and for sure John Jones would beat all the light heavyweights from the apparent golden era. And he's like, no, Chuck Liddell would knock out John Jones. And like, would he shite? Not a chance. And so I'm like, yeah, let him fight. Fuck it, let Chuck have like 12 lines. Let them both do a load of coke before they go in. That'd be interesting. Ryzen, you listening?
No,
where's Vanderlei?
Bellator, isn't it?
Because he fought Chael, but then did he get popped for something? Because
he's old and Brazilian, probably.
Somebody get on the phone to Vitor. Like, I don't understand why this is taking so long. It should be signed already. Tournament.
Someone work this out.
They should do a tournament with Rampage, Chuck, Vitor, and Vanderlei, and it'd be amazing. Just
sell.
Get Anderson in there. Get Chael in there.
We literally like half an hour ago was complaining about the tournament going, and now it's being like, nope.
There's a place for it, and Bellator is the place in certain states.
Do you know what the thing is like with the Bellator tournament is? The only problem I have with it is calling it for a world championship, because like the championship belt should, on some level, like I know there's always going to be a bit of an asterisk if you say like a Cage Warriors or a Bellator world champion that you're not a UFC world champion, but it should on some level indicate that you are arguably the best in that weight division. Is anyone at all believing that any possible winner of this heavyweight tournament is even in the top 5 heavyweight in the world? Like,
I think we had this discussion, and I would love to see Francis Ngannou just run through all of them.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Francis Ngannou against this modern Fedor with a chin that's arguably made out of fine crystal?
I think I've got gingerbread biscuits tougher than a modern Fedor chin.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Bader would probably have a go at Francis Ngannou.
See, I think we also said that about Bader's wrestling, but that was the only one. I feel if Bader doesn't win the tournament, it it would be kind of the worst thing ever to happen to him.
And Ryan Bader's
And he's had
double weight champion in Bellator, and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't understand. Like,
but if I was if you're like a double weight champion, you often don't defend the lighter belt. You defend the heavier belt because you've made that weight and you don't really want to go back down. But if I'm Bader, I'm thinking I just abandoned the heavyweight title already.
I'm so glad he beat King Mo, because that would have just been the most. So like, right, so you both fight at light heavyweight, but where you're the champion, but you've now beaten him, but because you weren't at 205, you're not the champion. So what, do we go back down and have a rematch? In which case, Bader would just definitely not sign that contract. He'd be like, well, fuck off, no. I'm not doing that.
Would have been a strange situation.
It's like, he definitely would be able to claim he was the light heavyweight champion, just not on paper. So like, he definitely sidestepped a very confusing situation there. So I was glad that happened.
Also, Brad, you were right. I did look it up. It's a conditional 1-fight release from BAMMA for Aaron Chalmers. So he's going straight back to BAMMA afterwards. And it's being promoted as a catchweight feature event. So yeah, it's literally just a one-off. Which
catchweight feature event. And on that note,
he's only been fighting for a year as well, which is crazy. But I feel like if he knocks him out, Bellator will sign him anyway. So.
Doesn't really seem like, I don't really know how tall he is, but he doesn't really seem like he's that big that he could never make lightweight. I mean, I guess he's like 6 foot, but like,
I feel this is just Bellator testing the waters with his popularity.
Yeah, definitely,
and seeing how much they can get.
Just how much they can take the piss with the audience when they'll still swallow it. Yeah, this arguably lightweight fighter is going to fight at an above weight catch weight, but whatever.
So, I think that brings it close to this very rambled through Darren Till hour.
More like the Aaron Chalmers hour.
Yeah, we may have to change it.
Wait.
I don't want to talk about Aaron Chalmers anymore.
We haven't mentioned Sage Northcutt, so here it is. There we go.
Oh, that's it. That's it. So, Brad, where can they find you on Twitter?
It's Stupid Flanders with an extra S on the end.
Kyle, where can they find you?
Kyle_Diamond.
You can find me, Connor.Whelan73. Also, Whelan Writes. Just plugging my quick blog there.
For the MMA predictions.
For Verdict. Verdict MMA approved predictions. Just to quickly put that in. And MMA history as well. They retweeted it to their 60k followers. But yeah, I know. I'm hitting the big leagues, boys.
Remember me.
So, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe we should. Yeah, we'll definitely do one. We'll definitely do one after Liverpool.
Yeah,
the hour-long cheer.
We will see you for the Darren Till hour.
Yes,
next week.
We're all going to be on Prosecco. So, right, guys.